Well, good evening. I want to thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Nada St. Germain, and I was introduced to this company over 35 years ago for health reasons. I was struggling with my own health, and so was my mom. Just really tired, run down, hormonal issues. My mom had a lot of pain in her body, and I think for me, I was just dealing with stress with the shift work of being a police officer and just not sleeping regular hours and just my hormones. I already always had challenges with my hormones, and a neighbor and a dear friend just shared some of the products with me, and they really turned my health around along with my mom. But one of the products that really helped my mom was the product we're going to be talking about tonight. And that's why I'm excited to share this with you, because a lot of your autoimmune diseases or some of these health conditions are linked because of poor gut bacteria. And, my mom was later diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And when she started taking the acidophilus from Neolife, the probiotic, it really turned her health around. That really helped us support her body to work better. So tonight we're going to learn a little bit more about this company. But what I want to share with you a little bit, first of all, as we get started, is who we are as a company for those of you that are looking at this for the first time. Because Neolife is a worldwide nutrition company operating in over 50 countries and in business since 1958, so celebrating over 67 years, and trusted by millions of satisfied customers and business partners. And our goal is together to end the trend of poor health, but also financial struggles. But I want to introduce you to our scientific advisory board. These are the drivers behind these excellent products. And Dr. Arthur First was the founding member of our scientific advisory board, and he put together the most brilliant scientists, and they all specialize in different fields. And I had the opportunity of spending time with most of these guys, especially Dr. Arthur First, early in my business. And his heart was just so full. And he was on a mission to help people understand how food and diet is so important, but you couldn't get everything from your food. And when he was talking about the gut and health, and I was like in awe. I knew I had so much to learn. So I know sometimes what you're going to hear could be a little techy or complicated, but the body is complicated. The digestive system is complicated, but our scientists sometimes can put something together that's so simple for us to understand. So I really hope that when you hear this interview, it's just going to help you understand why it's so important to keep that healthy gut balance. So let's listen to just the conversation that Dr. Shepard has with John Miller. Just waiting for this to load. No. Is it going to give me a hard time like it did last time? I'd have to load and unload again. Probably. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to see if I start up. Oh, enable content. Hang on. I played it earlier. You guys can still see the screen? You can see the probiotic. Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to session number 4 of Inside the SAB. In this session, we talk to Dr. David Shepard, longtime scientific advisory board member, who is probably our most expert biochemist, biologist, microbiologist, enzymologist, and in all of those sorts of things. So I'm going to introduce you now, Dave, and just tell us a little bit about, I probably didn't get that right, so tell us a little bit about your background.
No, it's pretty good, John, pretty good. Well, I guess it goes back a long way. I've always been interested in things that are biologically. Even as a kid, I used to want to go out in the fields, the woods, look at flowers and all this sort of thing. And that was why, even when I went to high school, I did a lot of studies in biology in general, and in botany and in zoology as well. And in fact, my first BS in university, at the University of Durham, was in fact in botany and plant physiology. And that was how I got really into microbiology, because in parts of that study, we did a lot of work on fungi. And that's the other thing that I've always been very interested in, and not only eating them, but studying them in other ways. Yeah. I then went on to do my master's and PhD, where again, I got into working mainly with fungi, but other microorganisms, and in fact, how they produce different metabolites. Like this is how we people discovered that in fact, antibiotics and certain enzymes, that these microbes are in fact fantastic factories, that if you give them the right food, they will produce all sorts of things for you. Yeah. And this is what's always fascinated for me a long time.
Yeah. Well,
after doing my PhD, I then did a postdoc very near to where you're, John. I was at UC Davis for 2 years, where in fact I looked inside the bugs to see what sort of enzymes these guys would make to sort of round out my knowledge of microorganisms. I went.
You got into industrial enzymology?
Yes, that was right. And that's in fact what happened, was that I didn't really want to stay in the academic world. I was always wanting to apply what I knew. And that's why I went to work one of the biggest food companies in the world for over 20 years, where in fact I set up a whole sector where we worked on using microorganisms to produce all sorts of things, from enzymes to colors. In fact, we had several patents actually on how microorganisms produce carotenoids.
Uh-huh.
And
cool.
And then we also did a huge project where we in fact tried to feed the world with what we called monocellular protein, which of course didn't take on because people were still wanted to eat steak in the 70s.
Yeah, but I see now that science is getting a lot of attention as we
exactly. We were, well, as usual with a lot of these things, we were way ahead of our time.
Yeah.
And then finally, before I joined Neolife, in fact, I was involved in doing a lot of research and development of nutritional products, instant products that we in fact marketed for about 40 different countries around the world. Uh-huh. And then I joined you guys, where I took up the flame again and continued developing products, but now more on the nutritional side, and also setting up a whole quality control system. Yeah. And then I got invited on the SAB, and as the saying goes, the rest is history.
Yeah, that was 1990, when you joined the SAB, a long time ago. Yeah. It doesn't seem that long. When I think back then.
Well, that's when I joined the company, and 1 year later I went to the SAB, and that was the same year that Ariana joined as well. Uh-huh. So he doesn't make either of us particularly younger.
that was a good year.
Yeah.
Good year. So, I think from the company perspective, and probably from the distributor perspective, this whole idea of microorganisms in general, and in particular, the ones that reside in our gastrointestinal tract, our gut bugs, as I referred to them. We think about them primarily as playing a big role in digestion. And you made some comments to me in a little earlier when we were talking about the reality of that, as though they play a role. It's pretty much digestion is done by the time it gets to them. Tell us a little bit about that again.
Before I do that, though, I'd just like to, so we're talking about gut bugs, as you say. But I mean, I think the term we use more technically today are called what we call probiotics. And in fact, everybody talks about probiotics as something relatively new. In fact, it was only in 2001 that the World Health Organization actually defined what a probiotic was. And they say that these are microorganisms that if they're fed in the right amount, will in fact have some health benefit to the receiver. And the thing that's important there is in the right amount. And I'll come back to that as a very important point later. We're talking about digestion, John, and how do the probiotics really fit into this? I always say, of course, that by the time what we eat, put in our mouth, reaches the probiotics in your gut, most of the digestion has probably been done anyway, because we chew it, we break up a lot of the food, we have enzymes in our mouth. It then gets down to the stomach, where the acid in the stomach helps break down further. There are special enzymes there. It then goes into the small intestine, where we load a lot of bile on it. And then finally, it gets to the probiotics, to the bugs that are in our mainly in our large intestine. And of course, if you like, this is true. This is the end of the road for digestion, because this is what we've done is we've broken all this stuff down. I mean, obviously, some of the nutrients that we release from all the food we eat are used directly through the intestinal wall and are used for all sorts of biochemical mechanisms. A lot of these molecules that are broken down from our food are actually used directly by these organisms to produce a load of other molecules and substances that we call secondary metabolites. Why secondary metabolites? Because they're produced as a byproduct of the metabolism of all these microorganisms, which are in enormous quantities. And the saying goes is there's probably more microorganisms in your large intestine than there are cells in the whole of the rest of your body. Yeah. So it gives you a bit of an idea of what sort of scale we're talking about there. Actually, if you look at weight, there's probably over a kilo, actually, or maybe a kilo and a half of these bugs in your, in your large intestine. And this is obviously why, if you have a problem with the intestine, your intestines, this is why very often you do lose a lot of weight.
Yeah. Get rid of your gut bugs and you step on the scale and all of a sudden you weigh 2 kilos less, which is
exactly
a significant amount of body weight.
So really, probiotics are part of the digestion, yes.
Yeah, cool. Now, you said earlier that World Health Organization defined probiotics in 2001, but we've known about gut bugs or these sort of microorganisms that do these sort of things for a long time, a couple of thousand years or maybe more?
Yeah, I mean, this is, if you like, I think that in the latter part of the 20th century, in the 21st century, these type of microorganisms have really come to the fore. And we'll talk about that in a moment, but it's true. You can go way, way back. The Romans, in fact, and the Greeks used to, in fact, make sort of cheeses using these type of organisms, and they obviously didn't know why, but they actually suggested that people should eat these fermented products to be healthy. And there's the famous fermented milks in Bulgaria that were studied by certain microbiologists at the beginning of the 19th century. That these were trying to identify why certain people in Bulgaria, for instance, lived a lot longer than in other places. And one of the reasons they thought was, in fact, they used to consume large quantities of these fermented milks. And in fact, one of the most well-known organisms we use today to make yogurt is called Lactobacillus bulgaricus.
Right.
You don't have to guess where the origin was.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, these have been around for a long time. The thing that's happening now recently, we're understanding why they are important.
Yeah. So we used them not only for food production, but food preservation, yeah?
Yeah, especially for food preservation, because if you look at things like milk, if you look at things like wine, and a lot of other things that we have and have had for centuries, if you just leave them, then they will go off.
Right.
But some of them, in fact, instead of going rotten, they've found out that there were certain organisms that developed there that, funnily enough, ended up by allowed them to make cheese or fermented the grape juice, which then made wine. And this, with the alcohol or the acid as it is in cheese, then allows you to keep these for a lot longer. And invariably, these things were produced at the time, our ancestors, of course, during the summer. Yeah. And of course, during the winter, they had a problem. What do you eat? Well, you could eat the cheese because this would keep for a lot longer.
Yeah. Food preservation, obviously, before refrigeration with the modern technologies, or even maybe the ice box, food preservation has always been a challenge for us. So I imagine it was a big discovery that you can do that, and all of a sudden, cheese will last you a long time when you turn it into cheese. Hey, be good. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to just touch on, leaping forward, if you will, all of the things that we just talked about, and talk about how we use that understanding in the development of our product Acidophilus Plus. It's I know there was a lot involved. You were a key player in the development of that formulation with us, not only the ingredients, but the delivery system and all of that sort of thing. So I'd like you to give us a little background from your perspective, because you had that unique view of being one of the primary driving forces behind the product.
Okay. Well, the logic about developing this product was that we know at the time, and this has been around for ages, that if you go to your store, your supermarket, then in the chilled shelves, you always find all types of yogurt, and they're becoming more and more popular. Yogurt itself, they've developed other ones which we call acidophilus milk. Then there's other, we found the bifidobacteria as well. The bifidobacteria, these are specifically very good strains that were found really in the guts of infants originally, but they found that also they give you very good fermented products. And then there's a Japanese product that's known around the world now called Yakult, which again has very specific strains. Now, all these products you can go and buy every day in your supermarket is fine, but they have a very limited shelf life. You have to keep them in your refrigerator all the time, and you have absolutely no idea how many organisms you in fact are going to imbibe by eating any of these fermented products. And as I said earlier, one of the definitions of the World Health Organization was in getting the right amount of the microorganisms in your system. So we approached one of the best known, one of the biggest producers of this type of probiotics in the world, who in fact thought that this was quite a good idea, that not just have one strain, but have a multi-strain. Now in yogurt, there are two strains. One is Streptococcus thermophilus and Lactobacillus bulgaricus, or it may have other names today because scientists love to change names on it.
Yeah.
There's the Lactobacillus casei, which is in Yakult. Obviously, in the acidophilus milk is Lactobacillus acidophilus, and in the bifidus milks, there's obviously Bifidobacterium, and then it depends on which university you went to, what you call it, which you give the species name. But anyway, so we ended up with all these five strains. Yeah. And of course, working with one of the better companies in the world for this, they knew exactly how to produce these strains, no problem. They knew how to mix them. But of course, the big problem is, as I said before, and this is why it amuses me when you see on competitive products, oh, we've got trillions of this, we've got trillions of that. It's a big horsepower game. But that's not what's important. It's not what you put in your mouth that's important, it's how many of these bacteria you actually get into your large intestine.
Right.
And this was one of our biggest challenges, that we ended up with a very, very special system whereby we put all these organisms in a capsule in a very special matrix, that when these capsules get into your stomach, the capsule itself breaks down. And then with the acid in the stomach, it actually makes a gel out of this matrix. And then this is flushed out of your stomach, gets into your intestine, where, as we know, because of the bile, it changes from being very acid to alkaline. And in these alkaline situations, this matrix breaks down, releasing all the microorganisms that you took in your mouth. And so, in other words, what we put on the label, actually, we know will get to where it does its work in the large intestine.
Yeah, I remember when we developed that.
The biggest challenges we had.
Yeah, I remember when we developed that, this whole idea of targeted delivery technology, right? We knew that most of the products, if not all of them, certainly yogurts and things like that you consume, that the stomach acid is pretty aggressive stuff. It attacks and breaks down things, and basically they're just proteinaceous things. It treats them like food and digests them too. So you need to pass it through that very harsh atmosphere environment of the stomach and into the intestine. Then that technology that allowed the capsule to break down and form the gel, and then the gel to be acid resistant yet alkali sensitive. So when it got further down into the into the intestine, it released those organisms. That's pretty tricky. And the fact that we were able to show that in the laboratory was great. So, one of the things that that you mentioned earlier, and I'd like to focus on, is the idea of a I think you called it a monocolony, or so you end up, some products you end up with one strain or just, sort of one or two strains, where really it's a diversity that you want to promote in your gas.
Yeah, I think this is very important, because in fact there are a lot of studies coming out where people say one particular, not only one organism, but a very special strain of one organism will do this, this, and this. And this worries me, because the thing is, I'd like to mention another point that's very important. Working with the people we did to develop this product, they understand, because they're one of the biggest producers of starter cultures for making cheese and yogurt and a whole load of other fermented products. And one of the biggest dangers you have when you go make industrial scale fermentation processes with these bacteria is that, unfortunately, like us, when we get COVID or something else, this is due to a virus. And unfortunately, nearly all these probiotics are very sensitive to what we call bacteriophage, which are in fact just bacterial viruses.
Uh-huh.
And so these people understand this problem, and therefore we can guarantee that every time the strains that we select are in fact resistant to these viruses. Because if what happens is, these viruses get hold of the cells, they, like the viruses that get hold of our cells, they just totally destroy them, and therefore there's no activity.
Yeah.
So this is very important. This comes back to the point that I was just making again about the problem with having a lot of these studies that are being done with one strain. Nobody ever talks about resistance to these viruses, these bacteriophage.
Right. Right.
Because this is one of the biggest problems because it's all right doing this in a test tube in a laboratory. Yeah. But if you ever want to start producing industrial scale amounts of this so you can sell these products, this is one of the biggest problems you're faced with.
Yeah,
and this is why the people we work with understand this.
Yeah, the reality is that, that none of this, what's going on, your microbiome, none of it's static. It's a very biodynamic thing that's going on all the time. And I've read a lot about the fact that you have to, just like you sort of have to get a flu shot every year to deal with whatever's going on with that particular virus, you have to pay attention to that in terms of your raw material selection and delivery of organisms. And I know that that's one of the things that you have told us that our supply system takes into account, probably better, or at least as good as, if not better than everybody else on the planet in that regard. So
this was one of the reasons why we chose this particular supplier, because, as I say, they're one of the biggest in the world, and fortunately they worked with us. Yeah. But you're right. This is the thing. This is why we chose these particular strains. They're well known, so there's no problem of anybody coming back saying, "Hey, what's all these?" Because this is the other problem with a lot of research that's being done today that troubles me, is some of the microorganisms, the probiotics they're using. Even I have never heard of them.
Yeah.
And this worries me that, this is another reason why we chose those particular strains. Because if anybody says anything, well, where do these things come from? We can tell them they come from exactly the same products that you can go in your supermarket and buy off the shelf.
Yeah, they're whole food sourced, essentially.
They're whole food sourced.
Right, exactly. Which is different than going off and getting something that was grown in a petri dish and saying, oh, you need this.
I mean, some of these strains that they're talking about were isolated from the microbiome of certain people or animals or whatever. But I mean, the thing is, there are estimated something about probably between 4,000 and 5,000 different species of microorganisms in your large intestine, and that's just the species. And then these species have different subspecies of that, so God knows how many there are actually in there.
Yeah.
And of course, if you isolate this, you can isolate millions of different types of microorganisms and then try and do all sorts of things with them. But the thing that worries me is that until we know whether these things are potentially because it's all right them being in a matrix in the large intestine. The other problem is, of course, is what happens when you isolate them. And as I say, this is why we chose these food-sourced microorganisms that we can sleep on our low theaters, if you like, at night, and we know that you're not going to have a problem if you take Acidophilus Plus.
Yeah, no, I understand it. You know, we've always been very cautious about making sure that what we recommend to people, because they're going to, you know, hopefully they're going to take them a lot for a long time. We've always been very cautious about not getting fringy and having the formulations based on really solid science. And I think that the 5 organisms that are in Acidophilus Plus are the most researched organisms in the world, yeah. I think, you know, I mean, they've been, there's no real surprises going on there.
Well, no, because as I say, these are used in the food industry to make products to sell in supermarkets. So obviously they're going to want to be very sure that these things are going to work all the time. Otherwise, as I say, you know, you end up, you know, sort of with a tank of about several thousand liters of yogurt in it, and if it doesn't turn out as you want, then you're going to get pretty upset with the guy who sent you the microorganisms.
Yeah, the biotechnology sciences are constantly evolving. Yeah. Speaking of that, you know, I know from the reviews that you do every month, and you know, I read a lot in the journals too, that there's this steady stream of research coming out on probiotics in one form or another. I think it's, you know, I think it's just sort of the nature of the moment because it's such a hot topic. There's a lot of money being around for grants and so on and so forth. But, you know, my sense is that a lot of this is just sort of maybe interesting, but not really that valuable. What do you think?
No, I agree 100% with you. I think down the road, probably something will come out. But the thing that worries me is, in fact, there is just so much out there. You know, as the saying goes, he's taking a shotgun to, you know, kill something. And instead of zeroing in on certain things, of course, what has certainly pushed a lot of this research is, of course, that everybody's looking for the silver bullet for COVID. And of course, this is one thing that certain people have said, that if you take certain probiotics, then they think that you have a better problem of getting through COVID and all this. I don't believe that there's any particular strains that if you take that, you're not going to get COVID. One thing is for sure, though, that by having something like Acidophilus Plus, it will help you to have an overall good, healthy life. And if you're in relatively good health, then any disease that comes down the road, not saying you will never get it, but you probably have a better chance of getting through it than if you're in very bad health to start with.
Yeah, well, a healthy gut microbiome is associated with a healthy immune function too. For a broad number of reasons. I don't think you can relate that specifically to any individual sort of threat like COVID-19, but you can talk about it in the general sense that, you know, your immune system is constantly working. It's not like it goes to sleep just when there's nothing around. It is always working all the time.
And this is probably true that there are, as I always say, is that it's not really surprising that there's a lot of work being said about, for instance, in a lot of the research about this famous gut-brain axis.
Yeah.
Now, for a long time, it's always troubled me that we've always concentrated on that, as though these microorganisms said, hey guys, we're going to make something that's just going to be good for the brain. There are millions of these organisms. They're churning out all sorts of these, what we said before, secondary metabolites. These are results of the metabolism of when they have all sorts of mechanisms within the organism that when they get fed on certain raw materials, then they churn out certain molecules. And I'm sure that a lot of these molecules that they churn out having effects on every aspect of our bodies.
Right.
Not only that, obviously, it sounds good that your gut is actually making you think and taking charge of your brain. It worries me that, in fact, my large intestine is telling me today what I'm going to say to you. But anyway, that's another problem. Yeah. But the thing is that I believe that we will find, as we go to do more and more specific research, and we find out more about what the big problem, of course, is that all these things going on is in our large intestine. And it's a bit difficult to actually find out really what's going on there. A, it's a great matrix. And secondly, there aren't many people around who would like you to actually to open up your large intestine and see what's going in there. Yeah. There have been some studies of people who go through certain surgeries, of course, give samples for research. But even there, it's not obvious that this is what's going on all the time. Yeah. But I think as we go down the road, we will end up with some serious research. I think we'll end up with some multi-strain products that will, in fact, have some serious effects on our health. But for the moment, I don't think we're there. We, as the SAB and myself in particular, are following this in great detail. There are some, I think, not only researchers, but certain other companies than the one that we work with are looking at some serious studies. And maybe here in a couple of years or longer, I think we probably will end up with something that can be really used for new products for Neolife. I'm sure this was going to happen, but right now I don't believe that we're in that place at the moment.
I think what we're learning about, there's still a lot to be learned to figure out what you've learned. But I think that, what we're finding is that, as you mentioned earlier, that these organisms produce a lot of secondary metabolites that are signaling molecules or messenger molecules, or actually bioactive things that go to and influence the body. And I think we're going to find that that process affects everything some way, shape, or form. But I think the other thing we might find is in the presence or absence of certain organisms, that if you have a metabolite that's actually produced by a certain organism, and that organism is not present either because you have a bad diet or whatever it might be, then you don't get the benefit of that metabolite either. So there's a lot of linkage there that I think sought out.
Well, I think
one of the great things about Acidophilus plus is that, again, we know those organisms are there and they're going to get where they need to be.
Well, this is what I was just going to say. I think that this is something as well that we designed the Acidophilus plus. It's not that we're going to say we'll do this or something else. The thing is, it is a great stabilizer of the actual gut flora, or microbiome, as we like to call it today. And I think this is what it's very good at. That if you take this regularly, it will guarantee that you are getting a good supply of the right good guys where they do their work. Yeah. And I think that this is where it's very important. It will certainly give you a more regular transit through the intestine. And as I said, this is the thing. We're not going there. We're not making claims that if you take 2 of these or 3 of these a day, it's going to cure whatever. That's not the reason we developed it.
Yeah, there's a second sort of a secondary element I'd like to bring in here about this lactobacillus, this lactic acid producing organisms, and their role in keeping the gut microbiome sort of in check. We have some less than nice guys that occupy certain parts of our intestinal tract, like E. coli or C. difficile. Then they're opportunistic, and given a chance, they'd like to take over the whole. So explain that relationship a little bit for us.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's true that, as I said, the microbiome is just a matrix. It's made up of all sorts of different microorganisms, and whatever we eat, the most of the food we eat is not sterile. It may not be highly contaminated, but I know for a fact that certainly if you eat certain fermented products, I mean, even cheeses, you can get a certain number of microorganisms that may not do you very much good. But the thing about having the right guys there, of course, is what they do is they give an environment where they take over and the bad guys don't develop. And luckily, most of the pathogens that we could end up making us seriously ill do not like low pH, in other words, low acidity to survive. Therefore, this is the one great thing about the whole group of lactobacilli, even certain streptococci, which are used in yogurt, and bifidobacteria. They all do one thing. they like to metabolize sugars like lactose or certain others, and they produce a lot of acid. A lot of them produce lactic acid, but others produce other forms of acid that keeps the acidity very low. And if you keep the acidity relatively low in your in your large intestine, then the other guys cannot develop.
Right. It's sort of like a pH barrier, right?
Exactly. It's a pH. This is what I had a microbiology, a bacteriology professor who used to have this theory about barriers and hurdles. And it's true. The thing you have to do is to preserve a sterile or a healthy situation. Is the bad guys, you have to make them jump over as many hurdles as possible.
Yeah.
Acidity. In other situations, you can sterilize them. You can use irradiation, all sorts of things that the more hurdles they have to jump over, the less possibility they have of surviving.
Yeah,
and this is one thing that Acidophilus Plus does. It guarantees that the actual healthiness, if you like, of your gut is a perfect situation to prevent these guys taking over.
Yeah, perfect. I've seen that, it used to be that the medical community didn't embrace the importance of this too much. They would give you an antibiotic and then they would tell you just go eat normally afterwards. And if the antibiotic was any good, it, wiped out a bunch of bacteria in your gut, good or bad, and could often upset the apple cart. I remember years ago, something happened to my son where between the dentist and the doctor, they got the wrong antibiotic mixed and he ended up in the hospital with C. difficile overgrowth. Because not so much because of what they were doing, but because they didn't tell him that, oh, by the way, you should recolonize when you're done.
Yeah.
Right. And I know now the gastroenterologist I go to, and even my MD, my dentist, if they prescribe an antibiotic, they always sort of make mention that afterwards you should eat some yogurt or whatever, because they acknowledge now how important that part of the microbiome is to the overall health of the body.
Yeah, but there is still a lot of reticence to admit that, in fact, how important the microbiome is. And I think, unfortunately, the amount of studies that aren't very serious that have been done only is putting oil on the fire for certain people who are against this.
Yeah.
And this is why I just mentioned one thing. In fact, the people who we work with on developing and in fact producing Acidophilus Plus for us have just a few weeks ago announced what they're creating. They call the Probiotic Institute.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of this organization is, I think, very good, because what they want to do is to use serious scientists and different organizations, in fact, to sort out the wheat from the chaff and come up with, in fact, studies and areas and probiotics that down the road, they know industrially they could probably use, and therefore can propose new products that can really do more than just Acidophilus Plus can do.
Yeah, I think somebody needs to sort through the literature and figure out, what I call the impact factor on the data, the knowledge base. Is this really adds something important, or is it just a novel sort of thing that somebody demonstrated that has no real relevance in human health? So, I think that, we've had a great conversation here. What I'd like to do is, it seems like the future offers a lot of promise, but the future is still in the future. And in the meantime, I think there's people out there who recognize the importance of their gut microbiome and want to keep it as healthy as possible. Can you give us a few suggestions on, what you think is the best course to do right now?
Well, it's like everything else. If you look after your body, and I mean, a lot of people, we talk about taking care of your liver, of your heart and your lungs and all this. A lot of people, in fact, say that the microbiome and the gut microorganisms being a matrix is, in fact, it's the forgotten organ. Because, in fact, the way it works, in fact, is very similar if you look at the way the liver, the lungs, the heart, the brain, everything else works. These other organs all need feeding, and they all produce things, and they all have functions. And the actual probiotics in the gut are exactly the same. So if you look after them, they'll look after you. Therefore, in your diet, as we say always at Neolife, keep a balanced diet, sort of rich in fiber, lots of fruits and vegetables, because it also, strangely enough, there's some research coming out that maybe some of the substances we eat in fruit and vegetables, in fact, can also have an influence on your microbiome, but that again is down the road. Yeah. So, I mean, just keep a good, healthy, balanced diet. Simple as that. And of course, take Acidophilus Plus.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that's people want to find a magic cure for things, but it typically in biochemistry, as you know, human biochemistry and microbiology and the gut microbiome, it's never about one thing. It's not about that. No. It's about a diversity of things that you deliver constantly over time. And sometimes when we think about, well, I don't eat, enough fruits and vegetables, so I put on some weight. But what you don't realize is by not eating enough fruits and vegetables, you're also not feeding your gut microbiome what it needs. And that can set you up for even bigger problems in the long run. So I'm a firm believer in acidophilus. I don't take it every day because I don't need it every day, but I take it regularly nevertheless, just to make sure that I keep my colony going in balance down there. And I love the idea that these guys protect me from the bad boys that are also part of the.
Well, this is important because unfortunately, some of those bad boys are really bad. If they do take over, then these guys are not very funny. And the problem is that they're very, very often, if they do take over, they're very difficult to get rid of.
Yes. When my son was in hospital with C. difficile overgrowth, it got pretty scary. I mean, it was a nasty thing. And he was a young guy at the time. He was only 19 and, very, very physically fit. Yet it put him on a hospital bed simply because somebody messed with his gut microbiome and neglected to tell him, oh, by the way, we killed your gut microbiome. You should do something before the bad boys that are left over there take over. So I think
just one thing on that point, John. In fact, the thing is that this is where it is very useful. In fact, as you said, all of us, sometimes we can't help it. You need to take, for whatever reason, antibiotics. But this is where do not take acidophilus while you're on antibiotics, because as John mentioned earlier, unfortunately, most antibiotics are not very specific. So if you take acidophilus at the same time as your antibiotic, then unfortunately it'll get wiped out. Also, do not take garlic at the same time either, because garlic as well is also a very, very good antibacterial product as well, that in some cases can be very useful, but some of them have like allicin, and that has very good effects on other things in your body. But unfortunately, it also takes care of of any acidophilus you take.
Yeah.
But as I say, afterwards, after having your antibiotics, then certainly take as much as you want, because that's the important. You need to get the right guys actually working where they should be.
Yeah, get the team back on the field.
Exactly.
So anyway, Dave, I want to thank you for this conversation. I know you and I talk about this stuff all the time, and I love your ability to dig in and explain things like that. I think the audience that's listened here will get as much enjoyment out of it as I do. I just, the things that we've done that you've brought along to us with the introduction of Acidophilus Plus and our targeted delivery technology that makes sure the stuff gets to where it needs to be are things that sort of set us apart. And I'm looking forward to the next things that come across the SAB that help us move the needle down the road a little further even. So
I have to say that Acidophilus is definitely one of my favorite products. Some of you know my story when it came to allergies, and Dr. Shepard, when I heard one of his talks, oh my gosh, I'm talking 30 years ago now, he did talk about that healthy good bacteria and with Betagard. And anyways, long story short, my allergies were so bad that after being on those products, I would say about a year, I don't have any symptoms at all. So it's made such an impact in my life, and my mom too made a huge difference. And when you're looking at the basics of probiotics, I mean, they talked about all these bacteria, and there's over 500 types of bacteria, both beneficial and potentially harmful. And probiotics are a group of naturally occurring good bacteria that protect your health and well-being. And probiotics discourage the growth of disease-causing bad bacteria. And some of you know my story with Jack being in the hospital as well with his brain injury. I remember when I was talking to the surgeon, who again, I was so grateful he was from India because he was educated in both Eastern and Western medicine. The omega-3s, hands down, he highly recommended. But as soon as Jack was off the medication, I wanted to put him on acidophilus. And he said, oh, that was my next protocol. So it's kind of cool having a conversation with the medical doctor, knowing and understanding the importance of good bacteria along with omega-3 during his brain injury recovery. And when probiotics are in short supply, the bad bacteria can multiply, causing anything from minor digestive discomfort to more serious problems like gastrointestinal disease. So it's so important that we have this balance of gut flora. Now, we're talking about humans here and adults and kids and babies. But I was talking with Shelley Sheridan earlier today, who's an iridologist. And she's done some pretty amazing work. I know with my sister's dog. And Shelley, maybe you can explain even the importance of our animals.
Yeah, absolutely, Nada. Thank you. Yeah, I love the probiotics because anytime, as they mentioned, you're on antibiotics, anytime that you're eating processed foods, any of the sugars, like that is clearing out and destroying your good bacteria. So, one of the things that happens with people, but also with our dogs, is loose bowels, even to the point of diarrhea. And so getting that good bacteria back into the body. And I have used it many times with clients for people and kids. But as you said, Nada, with several dogs, including my own, where I have given them the probiotics and their stools. Just because it really helped their body and through their intestines, their stools moved along to being more formed and not having the diarrhea. So yes, they are good for babies all the way up to 100-year-old people, but absolutely you can use it with your dogs.
Yeah, thank you. And again, he did talk about the importance of the immune system, right? How to support the immune system. So again, plays such a big role in for all of us. And so again, strengthens immunity, naturally guards against infection by improving innate immunity, promotes a healthy response to foods in infants and children, reducing allergy symptoms, discourages growth of disease-causing bacteria, promotes colon health, reduces risk of colon cancer, bacterial enzyme detoxify cancer-causing substances, supports healthy colon cells. So our acidophilus. So they talked about, he was quite techie when he was talking about this, gel guard protection. And I just want you to understand that, that this is one of the biggest Neolife differences. And Neolife developed this technology. Okay, Dr. Shepherd was a part of this development, which is so incredible. That's why we're so proud of our scientific advisory board. So this just protects it so that the delivery system, it gets to that upper intestine where the cultures need to be. Okay, so important. It releases these cultures right through the intestinal tract to help to support that balance in digestion. And one of our acidophilus is similar to eating 10 containers of yogurt, but our acidophilus, believe it or not, I know this might not make sense to you, is vegan. Okay, so they've removed any of the dairy portion of that, so it's safe for people that are staying away from all dairy products. Okay, but it works incredible. We've had amazing results, and even though it only has the 5 billion, as Dr. Shepherd was saying, these companies that are advertising trillions, how much is actually protected and gets to where it needs to get to. And that's why we're so grateful to have our amazing Acidophilus Plus. I'm going to close with one of our core products so you can understand a little bit about some of the other products. It's a very, very short video, and then I'll explain how you can get started for those of you that are new this evening.
It can be hard to know which supplements will help you reach your goals. That's why we created the Core 3. No more wasting money on products that don't stand the test of time. It's our all-in-one solution to peak performance, weight management, and total wellness. Backed by world-class scientists, researchers, and health experts. Core 3 includes 3 powerful nutritional supplements. Elevate, a nootropic energy drink to power your brain and body. Formulated with ingredients to boost physical energy, improve mental focus, and support a balanced mood, all while hydrating the body. Neolife Shake, a biologically complete protein for weight management. Clinically studied benefits include weight loss, lowered body mass index, and cardio protection. Neolife Shake promotes your body's natural gut-brain satiety signaling to keep you feeling full. Pro Vitality, your foundation for cellular energy and health. Each daily packet delivers potent omega-3s, carotenoid antioxidants, phytolipids and sterols, and vitamins and minerals, including both whole food-derived and bioactive nutrition for lifelong health and vitality.
I've been taking Neolife for over 9 years, and as a busy dad with young children, it helps me give me the energy I need to get through my workouts, to get through my day, and to be the best version of myself.
As a mom on the go who had goals but was so frustrated with not reaching them, I was looking for a solution that was not only simple in my day, but a solution that was actually proven to work. And now, kickstarting my day with the Core 3 in less than 5 minutes with just water, I literally have the best energy and mental focus that lasts me all day. My body fat percentage is going back in the right direction, and I feel incredible.
Your search for products that work ends here. Core 3, your all-in-one solution for total wellness and a healthier you.
Hang on a second here. So for those of you that are wondering how to get started or even to give the products a try, we have a membership program, the Neolife Club, and it's free to become a member. As soon as you join, you automatically get a 10% discount. And I'm going to give you an example. That Core 3 is a month supply. So if you do have it coming on a monthly order, you do get that at 20% off. And you can add the acidophilus product in there, and you can change your order monthly. So you might not want acidophilus coming every month. Like, remember, even John Miller says he doesn't take it all the time. And it's because he does have a really clean diet. I've had several conversations with him, and he says the cleaner you eat, you can, not have to take it all the time, but if you don't eat clean all the time, you definitely need a probiotic every single day. And if you're just looking at trying the products, become a club member. But those of you that are kind of thinking, I'm curious about the business opportunity, just reach out to the person that invited you tonight and just have a conversation about the income in the business. Because, I started this as a customer, not realizing the income potential, but in a very short time, I fell in love with the products, and I knew that this was an incredible company and I wanted to impact lives. And where can you start a business in Canada for as little as $98 or $75 in the US? This unlocks a 25% discount, and the support is absolutely incredible. And if you're looking for time, freedom, flexibility, like for me, I want to leave my police career, I want to start a family and stay home. This allowed us to do this. So I just wanted to share that there's an incredible income opportunity because the products work, they impact lives, and we have solid science to support the product, like you did see here this evening. And both my boys now have a little side gig. They're both involved in the business, and they're really looking forward to building this into their future. So it's a family business. So it's something you can do part-time, or that can grow to a full-time if that's what you want to do. So again, if you just want to give the products a try, become a member, enjoy the products. If you're curious about the business, just reach out. And if you want to learn more, that's okay too. Reach out to us, ask questions, and we're here to help and support you every step of the way. So thank you so much for joining us. I'll stop the recording and open up any questions that you may have. So thank you again.